So we got to take from that and learn from that, and really prepare for another season with the challenge of a salary cap situation that's probably as difficult as anything we faced in the salary cap era. So we certainly have our work cut out for us going into this off season.
Hi everybody, I'm Missi Matthews. Welcome to Steelers Live. That was Steelers President Art Rooney II speaking to myself and the rest of the media last week, talking about the 2020 season. And as you heard, looking towards this offseason and the work that has to be done. A number of things to discuss today. So let's introduce you to my panel. Bob Labriola of Steelers.com and Steelers Digest giving us the thumbs up. He's ready to go. We also have Mike Prisuta of the DVE Morning Show and Matt Williamson of Steelers Nation Radio on hand. Okay, guys, so we know that whenever Art does his kind of State of the Union postseason, there are a lot of things to pay attention to. And of course, one of the number one topics of things that he spoke with local writers, myself, other people on the video side, of course, is Ben Roethlisberger and his future with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021. So let's listen to part of that interview.
Well, Ben has been in and talked to Coach about it, and Ben wants to come back and play. I think Coach and Ben have had a couple of good conversations now, but Coach and Kevin have both been candid with Ben in terms of letting him know that the current contract structure is not going to work, and so we're going to have to figure out if we can work together to craft something that we all can live with.
All right, Labs, I'll start with you. If you could kind of break down what Ben's contract is heading into the final year of this deal for him, and then also what you made of the comments that you heard there from Art Rooney II.
Well, let's start with, the contract. Most of the problem with Ben's contract with respect to the 2021 salary cap has to do with the multiple times that the Steelers approached him about restructuring to create cap space for a particular year so that they could, do business during the offseason with either keeping their own free agents or trying to sign some from the outside. You look at Ben's contract, it called for a $15 million roster bonus that is due to be paid to him on the third day of the new league year, which is rumored to be at this point March 17th, plus a $4 million base salary. So, you look at Ben's cap number if he stays, and it's $41.25 million. So the difference between 41.25 and 19 are all of the times that the Steelers converted his base salary into signing bonus to create cap room to do what I just explained earlier, to create room to either sign their own free agents or to go out and try and sign some of their own. So, okay, that's if Ben comes back. That's according to the contract that team president Art Rooney II just mentioned. You really can't. You can't live with that number. If the Steelers would, or if Ben would retire, they would be assessed $22.25 million in dead money, and so you really can't have that either, because the cap is going to probably be reduced from 198 to like 175 or 180, and then so there's that reduction. Then another 22.5 million, give or take, is dead money. That's just as untenable a situation as playing under the current deal. So I think that there's going to have to be a meeting of the minds, Ben's camp, the Steelers, and work something out. Now, we heard what he said to you, Missy, in that audio video that we just heard and watched. What he said on the Zoom call to the reporters, there's just one sentence that is different, and I think it's somewhat significant in that he said, Ben wants to come back. We would like him back. We've left that door open, which means to me it's not a done deal. It's not a done deal that they're definitely going to do, what they have to do to get his cap number down to bring him back. It's not a done deal that Ben's camp is going to be willing to accept what the Steelers decide that is their bottom line, what they have to do. And so it's still very much a wait and see proposition. So, again, there's no clarity at this point except to say that the Steelers and Ben are kind of in agreement that they cannot operate under the terms of the current deal.
All right, so all of that being said, Prisuta, I know you directly asked Art Rooney II, can he envision a scenario where Ben isn't the quarterback next year? What did you make of the response?
Pretty much what Lab just pointed out, that this is not resolved. Art is not, in my experience at least, Bob has interviewed him more often than I have, so he may have a different take on this, but I don't normally find that Art Rooney II makes a lot of declarative statements. He usually speaks in inferences, and you kind of get the idea where he's going. But just compare what he had to say, what Art Rooney II had to say about Mike Tomlin. I feel comfortable in saying that he'll be our coach next year. Now, that was talking about, is Mike Tomlin going to get an extension, or not next year, into the future. Let me correct myself. I'm comfortable saying that he'll be our coach into the future. Now, what I take for that is Mike Tomlin's going to be the guy, and he's going to be here. And when he says about Ben Roethlisberger, we'll leave the door open, and then you ask him to, can you clarify that? Do you envision a scenario when he's not the quarterback? And Art says a lot of discussions have to be had. I think, is it likely? Probably. Is it a done deal? I think absolutely not.
Matt, what do you make of everything that was said? Also, Ben and his camp spoke to a few other reporters. That information, of course, is out there following the conversation with Rooney. So what do you make of what could potentially go down this offseason? As Labs pointed out, there is a deadline apparently coming up at the beginning of March.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot to add. I mean, Labs really laid that out well, the entire situation. It's going to come down to a bottom line. This is what we think you're worth, and this is all we can do, to be honest with you. And the cap is a huge concern this year. The Steelers are up against it, more than most teams. They have a lot of guys set to potentially leave in free agency. So I think there's other options outside the organization, but we'll see. I mean, I don't have a ton of feel one way or another if Ben will be back or not. I don't think it's a done deal.
All right, stay tuned for more on that. Another thing that Art mentioned, of course, was the inconsistency in the offense. And a lot of that, he was pointing his finger towards the lack of the run game. And if you guys go back to a year ago, he was also, making it very well known the run game had to improve. To say it did not is not an understatement. They finished 32nd in there. So there are also some new coaching changes as well that maybe go into that after hearing what Art had to say. So just to quickly recap as we sit here today, Matt Canada was promoted to the offensive coordinator position. Adrian Clem was promoted to offensive line coach. And then coming from the outside, the Steelers hired Alfredo Roberts as the tight ends coach. James Daniel, of course, retired. And then we know that Randy Fiechner, Sean Surratt, and Tom Bradley, their contracts were not renewed. So, Williamson, I'll start with you here. Knowing that Matt Canada was with the Steelers last season, had a chance to work, of course, with all of the quarterbacks, but also bringing some new college flavor to the Steelers offense. What do you make of that move and how this could help the Steelers jumpstart that run game?
I think some out there look at it like it was a failed experiment, that, we saw this jet motion and a lot of things early in the season, then they got away from it, and Matt Canada didn't bring much to the table, I think, is what people think. And I think that's really wrong, to be very honest with you, because if we would have had a normal training camp preseason and could have really installed what he was bringing to the table, I bet it would have been more of a foundation of the offense throughout the course of the year. The big thing, though, and this is what we talked about earlier, it depends on Ben. I mean, Ben throughout his career has been at the bottom of the league in play action percentage. Is he just not comfortable with it? And if that's the case, then you don't use it. I mean, you have to cater your offense around your quarterback. Quarterbacks are like baseball stadiums. If you have a short right field porch, you get a bunch of left-handed power hitters. I mean, it's just the way it works. But I think Canada is an excellent bridge for the now, and maybe that's one more year with Ben, while slowly instilling his concepts, which I think are what the league has gone to, pre-snap motion, jet motion, all the things that the Steelers haven't done a lot of, I think needs to be incorporated for the next quarterback, whether that's this year or next.
All right, Prisuta, going back to the beginning of 2020, the 11-0 winning streak, best start in franchise history for the Steelers, there were still questions about the run game or lack thereof. And everybody kind of said, it's fine, what we're doing is fine. Do you feel like the lack of that run game and commitment to it, as Art Rooney II said, is what really started in terms of the collapse in the second half of the season?
I do not. I think what really started it for me, they dropped a ton of balls for some reason in that Baltimore game against the JV Ravens, as
Right.
people have pointed out. And then Washington came in here and won. The Steelers didn't have their kicker. They didn't connect the fourth down pass that was wide open. I look at the final four teams this year. Buffalo, 20th in rushing, and that's with the quarterback running. Kansas City, 16th in rushing, and that's with the quarterback running. Tampa Bay, which is playing in the Super Bowl, 28th in rushing. Green Bay, 8th in rushing. The Packers are kind of the exception among the final four. I think you got to score points. I really don't care how you do it. I think they can improve the running game, and their objective not to be last in the league is admirable. But you got to score points and you got to throw the ball. However you get that done, get that done. I think the running game was down on my list of concerns behind inconsistent performance on the other end of passes, the defense getting injured, and the quarterback all of a sudden starting to throw interceptions in the second half of the season.
All right, Labs, I know after you had a chance to hear from Art Rooney II, part of your column was about, instances in Steelers history where the run game wasn't up to par and they were able to swing the momentum, make some changes, and improve it. What do you take away from history? Then also, what do you anticipate happening this upcoming season in 2021?
Well, I'm going to go back to what Matt said about having a normal training camp and a preseason, and that being important, because in the most recent iteration of this kind of bad running game, and then trying to, as Bill Cowher called it, the catchphrase was reestablish the mindset. That was the 2004 offseason after the final 2003 season, which was the second and final season of what I refer to as the Tommy Maddox mistake. Tommy Maddox, Zaraway instead of Bettis, that kind of stuff. So what happened then was Ken Wisenhunt was promoted from within, from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator, and training camp was all about coming off the football. And, when Mike Prisuta was just mentioning how it kind of came apart at the end of the season for the Steelers and what he determined to be the factors, number one factor for me was getting handled on the line of scrimmage. And I always refer to this play. It was the second, third, and one, I believe, in the playoff game against the Browns. Larry Ogunjobi stood up Marquise Pouncey, drove him into the backfield, into Derek Watt, who was, fullback up the middle, trying to, get the first down and stuff the play. I don't care what kind of jet motion or, bells and whistles or anything you think you can have to enhance your running game. If your offensive linemen are getting stood up at the snap and driven into the backfield, you can't run the ball. You're not going to be able to throw the ball. You're not going to be able to do anything. And so, to me, number one is you got to get back to coming off the ball on offense, being physical, and winning those one-on-one matchups that, to me, are at the core of any successful football play. And so that's what that 2004 training camp was about. Bill Cowher was a big goal line guy, that drill goal line, and he would run maybe 6 to 9 plays goal line, put the ball to 2, live tackling. And I remember Ken Wisenhunt called 14 straight running plays, 14 straight running plays. And they were getting stuffed, and the defense was dancing around and, doing those kinds of things that happen in competitive drills at training camp. And I asked Wisenhunt about it. I said, did you think about play action pass or something? And he said, me scoring a touchdown in a drill at training camp in August is not as important as making these guys understand that when we're down at this point of the field for a real game, they're going to have to come off the ball and move the defense back. And that's what they need to do again. They got to get back to that. And until they do, I just don't think it can work.
All right, another hot topic, of course, we heard from Art at the top of the show is free agency and the large amount of work the Steelers front office will have in doing that. It's not just Ben Roethlisberger and his contract, but here you see it, almost 20 guys that will be unrestricted free agents, not to mention that TJ Watt, they picked up his 5th-year option. That is obviously somebody they would like to extend into the future of remaining a Steeler, but Vance McDonald retired just a few weeks ago, and I did ask Art the other day when I had a chance to sit down with him if he anticipated any more. He said possibly. That would kind of tell itself in the next few weeks, but when you're looking at this Prisuta, I'll start with you here. How do you even begin if you are Kevin Colbert and company of dealing with the laundry list of guys and, you know, Ben and TJ and everybody that I mentioned as they start into the offseason?
Well, you know, I think you do it like any other year. You prioritize it. Now, there's a lot more to sift through this time around, both with the number of guys that are unrestricted free agents and the salary cap issues, which, as Art Rooney has said, are, you know, like never before. But I look at two things. To Lab's point about the offensive line, I think the offensive line, to me, was the most disappointing unit on the team. I expected way better from that. You got to fix that. And then I think we've seen a couple of times now in the last 4 years, you had what you thought was a really good defense. Ryan Shazier gets hurt, and that kind of goes out the window. This year it started with Devin Bush, and then, you know, Bud Dupree compounding it. But they got to figure out a way to have more depth on defense. Maybe I don't know how you do that with all the complications they're going to deal with. Maybe you have fewer stars and kind of meet in the middle between your starters and your depth. But you got to expect that injuries are going to happen, and you're not going to have the 11 you start the season with. And they got to find a way not to have it torpedoed before the most important games of the season come around, which are the playoffs. Because if you look back at that Cleveland game, I mean, everybody remembers the snap over Ben's head, and everybody remembers all of the interceptions. But that defense gave up yards and points as well. And even at the end of the game, when the Steelers were trying to get back in it, touchdown. It wasn't good. Got to fix that. I don't know if that's first, but it's up there.
All right, Matt, maybe from a different perspective, we heard Art say last week, you know, if he could take the 2020 team back for 2021, he would do it. Obviously, that is not going to be remotely possible. We still don't even know what the salary cap is going to be set at for each team. But looking at that list of free agents, who do you see going somewhere else, knowing the market, even though the salary cap's unknown, but just what they've proven in their times with the Steelers and being able to maybe, you know, cash in somewhere else?
Oh, I think Juju's going to be gone, and that's the easy one. He's going to get paid an awful lot of money. They're pretty set at that position. They can live without him. I think the better question is who's going to be back. I mean, there's 18 names, and several of them will be very low priorities for the whole league. You know, they'll be waiting around until the end. I mean, as the nature of this is. But there's 3 names that I think will be priorities to bring back, and that's Zach Banner, Cam Sutton, who I think is going to be pricey, and Tyson Alualu, probably on a 1-year deal, hold down the fort, played well, fits the system well. And my guess is Banner's injury could work to the Steelers' advantage.
All right, Labs, going back in the salary cap era, do you remember a time where the Steelers had so many guys on that list or so much maneuvering to do?
Well, I don't think and I've tried to go over this in my head. I don't ever remember the salary cap going down from 1 year to the next, never. So this is an unprecedented offseason in just that respect. Now you're going to have your challenges where, you know, a bunch of your players become, you know, unrestricted free agents, but combining that with a cap that's going down, no, never has it ever been like this in my memory. You know, after the 95 season, the loss in Super Bowl 30, you know, the Steelers were in a position where they had a couple of quarterbacks. The starting quarterback, Neil O'Donnell, and I believe Mike Tomczak was also unrestricted. And so you're looking at it, you know, now looking back on it, I'm sure fans would say, well, you know, they should have got rid of both of them and that would have helped the team, just addition by subtraction. But, you know, when you're looking at it from that time frame, you know, your top 2 quarterbacks on a team that went to the Super Bowl, both unrestricted free agents, you know, that's a fairly dire looking situation. But no, it's never been like this where the Steelers have had a combination of a number of their players unrestricted, combined with a decreasing salary cap from one year to the next.
All right, well, that means we will have plenty to talk about this offseason, so we will be back next week with all of the latest news and notes. Thank you guys so much for joining me today here on Steelers Live. I really appreciate it. Don't forget the NFL honors are taking place on Saturday night. We will find out, is TJ Watt the Defensive Player of the Year? Also, who's getting into the Hall of Fame? Our fingers are crossed for Bill Nunn and Alan Faneca. And our hearts go out to the Rooney family after the loss of Mrs. Rooney. That's all for today. We'll see you guys next week.
What's up, Steelers Nation? It's TJ Watt. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers official YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on everything going on in the Steel City. Thank you for being the best fans in football. Here we go.